I could rest my case on this premise alone. You cannot call a man guilty unless it has been proven. Michael Jackson was tried. All the accusers were assembled for questioning and statements. But he was acquitted of all charges in a U.S. court of law by a jury convinced of his complete innocence. In addition to that, every accuser Jackson ever had never made it to court on its own merit. All the other cases fell apart because of lies, inconsistencies, or insufficient evidence, and never had enough meat for Jackson to have to respond to them. At least legally, Jackson's innocence must be respected. What many people still do not realize is that none of Jackson's accusers should have even made the news. There was never anything there to begin with. It was all sensationalism, hearsay, and hype. Michael Jackson was crucified largely because of his fame. It all started with the first accuser. Michael Jackson befriended Jordan Chandler and his mother June. Jackson met them after being helped by them when his car broke down and soon invited them to Neverland Ranch. The boy's father, Evan Chandler, became estranged from Jackson because Evan Chandler began to hound Jackson to buy them a new house and to support his script writing endeavors. Because of Chandler's endless and aggressive pursuit of Michael's assistance, their relationship soured and the older Chandler was cut off. Evan Chandler eventually grew jealous of Michael's relationship with his ex-wife and his son, and plotted to make something out of his connection to Michael Jackson in one way or another. Chandler hooked up with lawyer Barry Rothman, who was known to be one of the most ruthless, and who was also very familiar with child abuse cases, and the plot began. Chandler became the first to use Michael Jackson's well-known love of children against him. Through Evan Chandler, Michael Jackson was accused of having inappropriate contact with his son Jordan. It was an extortion. What was undisclosed to the public was that even the boy's mother, June, refuted the truth of the allegations. Also, several people already knew it was an extortion because Evan Chandler had been bragging about it around Hollywood. Carrie Fisher wrote about it in her book, Shockaholic. In a very creepy manner, Chandler bragged about his son's friendship with Michael Jackson and told her that his son was very good-looking, implying that he had something he assumed Jackson wanted. Chandler was a shady, failed dentist in need of cash who used to use his profession to write drug prescriptions for Hollywood stars and to get into their crowds. He was often loose-lipped and mentioned what he intended to do to Jackson to many people. No one proudly brags about that sort of thing regarding their children, if it were actually true. Carrie Fisher, among many, did not find him amusing and was repulsed at what was going to happen. Lawyer Barry Rothman, who was very experienced with child cases, knew exactly what Chandler needed to say and coached him for months. Rothman went over all the details and fine-tuned the logistics. After Rothman's instruction, Chandler boasted to Michael's people how airtight they had gotten things to look. After everything had been organized, Evan Chandler threatened to publicize the accusation and was threatening to go to court if they didn't give him what he wanted. They approached Jackson with the threat, and Jackson refused to pay Chandler anything. Consequently, Chandler went public and things got very serious very quickly. Jackson's advisors knew it was a well-designed extortion, and they advised Jackson to just pay a settlement. They advised Michael that a settlement was his best option because he would avoid exorbitant legal fees, bad press, costly time away from his career, and it would be over and done quick. They assured Michael that people would quickly forget it and he'd be able to move on with his life. It later became clear that Jackson's handlers gave him that advice primarily because of their greed. They knew that if Jackson paid the settlement, they wouldn't lose any of their investments in his schedule, concerts, appearances, or engagements. Going to court would have. Regardless, Michael agreed that he wanted it over as quick as possible, and the settlement was paid by Jackson's insurance. Unfortunately, not going to court turned out to be the biggest mistake of Michael's shortened life. After Michael paid the settlement with Evan Chandler, there was a media frenzy and a Michael Jackson gold rush. Everyone who had anything to do with Michael Jackson went wild trying to sell stories to the media or tried to win a settlement thinking he would just pay it. Known Hollywood hustler Janet Arvizo stepped up next to accuse Michael Jackson of harming her child. Yellow journalist Martin Bashir famously edited his documentary to make Jackson look guilty so that it could be more shocking, compelling, and juicy for a catapulting of his career. He was privately commending Jackson on what a great father he was, but simultaneously editing his documentary to destroy him. The very misunderstood Jackson made the mistake of voluntarily showing himself with the children, including the Arvizo boy, thinking that people would get him. In stark contrast, no one understood him, and people instead began to judge and scrutinize further. This is when Janet Arvizo, whose son was featured, chose to strike. Unbeknownst to the public, however, Janet Arvizo has a long history of welfare fraud and several other attempts to hustle money from celebrities and businesses. She once won a settlement from JCPenney's after she was caught shoplifting with her family. She claimed the security guards that collared her roughed her up and sexually assaulted her in custody, so they paid her a $75,000 settlement to go away. Even though Michael had helped her family and her sick child, Janet Arvizo turned around to try to win a settlement from him too, as is her nature. However, the plan backfired against her. Michael had learned from his mistake, and this time, Michael went straight to court. As expected, Janet Arvizo and her family were caught in several lies, and Jackson was acquitted of all charges. After Jackson's acquittal, all the other accusers began to drop like flies. The accusers either withdrew their cases themselves, or they fell apart with inconsistencies before ever making it to court. Michael Jackson was fully vindicated. All the accusers disbanded, and he would never have to go to court ever again. Unfortunately, however, the damage was done, and Jackson's image would never be the same. It has been said many times in no uncertain terms that Santa Monica DA Tom Sneddon should have been in jail. He almost single-handedly helped create the fiasco surrounding Michael Jackson because he planted much of the quote-unquote evidence when there wasn't any. Unbeknownst to the public, almost everything publicized as evidence in the media was an invention from Tom Sneddon. Lawyer William Wagner, who left much public commentary on the Michael Jackson trial, has stated emphatically that there is no way Tom Sneddon should not have been indicted and serving deserved time in prison.
I want all those judges to come on and answer questions. I want to ask them why they didn't demand, because they're an officer of the court, that Tom Sneddon be indicted for falsifying evidence in the Michael Jackson trial. And I was a witness. I was right there in the courtroom, watched him get caught, false fingerprints evidence, the phone evidence that they tried to create to say there was a conspiracy and all these phone charges, half a day on that. Then Sneddon wanted to withdraw it from the evidence pool in the court. No. The defender, Tom Mesereau, said that stays on. Judge said, you're right, it's already been entered, it stays. And the jury looked at all this false evidence and said, there's no way we can convict this guy. We got a pile of crap from Tom Sneddon's hand. I mean, this guy literally falsified evidence, and it's on the record. And there's millions of Jackson fans hate Santa Barbara County.
Yeah. See, I'm not aware of any of this, though, William.
Oh, I know. This is way beyond your field.
But I've always had good thoughts of Tom. I always thought he was a very honorable, good DA.
I did too.
So I'm not aware of any of this.
Tom Sneddon put some bad people in jail that needed to be in jail.
I think he was a successful DA.
Well, I know successful DAs that were crooks too, but this thing, what he did to Michael Jackson, was so beyond the pale of forgiveness. I have to say, and I know this won't make me popular with Gordy Auchincloss and Ron Zonin and that old bunch of DAs, and certainly not Dudley or Josh Lynn, but I believe Tom Sneddon should be serving time in prison. You cannot falsify evidence and then just say, oh, we lost the case. No. He had that boy put his fingerprints on the magazine at the grand jury And the reason we know that, because the alert Tom Mesereau, the defense attorney, got the grand jury transcript. And one of the grand jurors said, shouldn't that boy be wearing gloves? Then after the grand jury, they sent it out for fingerprints analysis. So where did the boy get his fingerprint on the magazine when the boy testified he hadn't even been at Neverland for months when that magazine was published? Yet he claimed that was the magazine Michael Jackson gave him in bed. And Tom Sneddon directed all that testimony. He falsified. Now, if he was a new DA, if he was green behind the ears, and he just got elected DA, and he made a stupid mistake, like giving the evidence to a boy, and then sending it out, fingerprint evidence with no gloves on, I would say, okay, he made a mistake. He's a greenhorn. He didn't know what he was doing. We can let it go. But 25 years? 25 years?
Sneddon worked primarily to demonize Jackson. He and the prosecution helped to block several witnesses who wanted to be called in to vindicate Jackson. One of these people was Jean White Ginder, the mother of HIV victim Ryan White. Jean White Ginder and her afflicted son had access to Jackson and the Neverland Ranch, and a perspective that most others did not. With White having HIV, obviously there was no sexual motives on Michael's part, and Ryan White was treated just as affectionately. White Ginder and her son had been with Michael for several days and had seen him in action with the other children. White Ginder is eternally touched and grateful for the work Michael has done for her child and many others, and wanted to put the allegations to rest. She was prepared to explain the atmosphere with Michael, the children, and many of their parents who were often present. However, they successfully kept her and others from being called as witnesses. Tom Sneddon deliberately tried to fix the case against Jackson. When it was revealed that much of the presented evidence against Michael Jackson was all nonsense, mostly fabricated by Tom Sneddon and the prosecution, no one was brought to justice, nor did the media ever bother to expose the truth or correct all the public misconceptions of what had been promoted in the media for months. Sneddon had a strange personal vendetta and personally tried to bring Jackson down. Despite the lack of evidence and his probable innocence, Michael Jackson was acquitted and all the accusers eventually dispersed. However, the actions of the Santa Monica law enforcement, under the direction of Tom Sneddon, have mysteriously been kept completely out of focus and undiscussed. Tom Mesereau, an investigative reporter, Aphrodite Jones, who covered the Jackson cases, had it absolutely right. They and countless others have proven that it was clear Michael Jackson was railroaded by the media. One very conspicuous reality became even more clear regarding Michael Jackson's cases. The media was hooked on it, and it was the gift that kept on giving. In a nutshell, Jackson's innocence did not interest the news media publications. The once innocent and angelic star's presumed guilt and fall from grace is what interests them. And that's how the news was reported. Jackson appearing guilty and about to be sentenced to prison is what they reveled in, despite how far from the truth it actually was.
In both the Jackson case and the Sandusky case, the media got a hold of this stuff. Is there something wrong with that?
Yes, there is. A grand jury proceeding is supposed to be secret. It's supposed to be closed. In the Jackson case, information was being leaked on almost a daily basis from that grand jury room. And remember, there's no defense lawyer in sight in a grand jury proceeding. Additionally, the first day of jury selection in the Jackson case, someone took all those transcripts and handed them to ABC. The judge had ordered they be suppressed and basically remain secret until they naturally arose during the course of the trial. So people were trying to prejudice everyone against us. I suspect that may be starting in this case, too.
Yeah, that's illegal, though, if anybody released grand jury testimony, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, but...
No, Michael had witnesses against him. There were people who worked at Neverland who tried to claim that all of these other young men were molested. They got on the stand one after another saying they'd seen things in the shower, they'd seen things in a pool, they'd seen things in his room. The prosecution really tried to load up on us in the Jackson case. The problem was they all fell like a deck of cards when you started cross-examining them. They'd made conflicting statements, they tried to sell their stories, they had questionable paths. I mean, it was just amazing to watch them fall like dominoes, and you never know if that'll happen in this case. Well, remember, in the world of Michael Jackson, there were so many con artists and exploiters and imposters showing up trying to take advantage of Michael Jackson. He was the best-known celebrity, he was fabulously wealthy, and so many people would show up with their hands out trying to get something that we were able to not only knock over these witnesses one by one, but show a picture, a broader picture of exploitation. And it all worked in the end. And now, no.
You still believe Michael Jackson was innocent of all of this? Not guilty, but innocent.
I know he was 100% innocent. He wasn't just acquitted, he was vindicated. That jury said not guilty 14 times.
No, but you personally, now that Mr. Jackson is not here any longer, you personally, 100% convinced he was not a child molester?
I'm 100% convinced he was innocent and not a child molester. Yes, sir.
All right, Counselor. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
In the back of the book segment tonight, the media circus surrounding the Michael Jackson child molestation trial back in 2005 may now be a distant memory. But one reporter who covered it is breaking her silence about what she calls the conspiracy among the press to convict an innocent man. Aphrodite Jones is the author of Michael Jackson Conspiracy, and she recently spoke with Bill.
So what exactly, Aphrodite, is the Michael Jackson Conspiracy?
It's a book that I've written which outlines the media conspiracy along with...
What is it? What is it?
The media conspiracy?
Yeah.
It's the media already decided that Jackson was guilty before there was ever a trial, based on prior allegations that were allegations, just that.
But part of that was you.
And I was part of that.
You were the part of the media conspiracy that thought he was guilty.
Absolutely. I'm the first one to admit it. It's the first thing I say in the book, in my author's note. We, as the media, decided he was guilty before proven innocent. What's wrong with America today that we would do that to somebody?
Was he innocent?
Before I would hurt a child, I would slip my wrist. I would never hurt a child.
I mean, he was found not guilty.
That's right.
The difference between being innocent and not guilty.
He is innocent of that charge, and it's proven in that book, because when you look, Bill, we didn't cover the trial, what was going on in the courtroom. You know what we did? We covered the man. We covered Pajama Day. We covered celebrities coming in and out. We didn't cover the fact that employees...
But when you were in there, you didn't think he was innocent.
No.
You were in a trial for us.
I was in the trial.
You thought he was guilty as sin.
And so did everyone else. I was following...
But you're in the trial.
I'm in the trial, and I'm in the pack mentality. And the pack mentality...
You were hypnotized.
I was hypnotized.
Were you really?
I was.
Okay, so you went in with a preconceived notion, and no matter what you heard didn't blow you out of that?
That's exactly right, because everybody else was saying the same thing, and I kind of wanted to be one of, follow the crowd.
I'm surprised, Aphrodite. When was your epiphany?
It wasn't until a year later when I went. The judge gave me a court order to look at the evidence, and I was in the basement of the courthouse with a court clerk looking over my shoulder, and I saw the original tape of the accuser giving his confession to police, and I watched it twice and then 3 times, backed it up. This kid was lying through his teeth about his sexuality.
And you knew that how?
Well, number one, by what he said, and I don't want to say it on the news. But
all right, so you came to the conclusion this whole thing was bogus.
Well, and he lied previously in the past, admitted to that on the stand, admitted he was a liar on the stand.
Right. Let me ask you about Jackson. You don't think this guy's a pedophile?
I think that Michael Jackson is a misunderstood human being because he doesn't know how to deal in the adult world. He never has.
But you don't think he's a pedophile?
I don't think he's a pedophile.
Okay. I'm saying that with all due respect to everybody, to your expertise and everybody else, I wouldn't let him near it. Would you?
Yes, I would. But I don't have kids. So that's...
If you did, you would let Michael Jackson babysit you?
I would let him babysit my kids. Absolutely.
All right. So your book, you can get it on Amazon.com. Aphrodite Jones, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Michael Jackson was analyzed by psychologist Dr. Katz, who was assigned to the case, and it was confirmed that he didn't find him to be an abuser, nor did he fit the profile. Jackson was described to be more of a regressed 10-year-old himself. People who take advantage of children have certain predatory behaviors and characteristics, none of which existed in Jackson. Jackson wasn't shy about his affinity for children in front of whomever, and he saw them more as friends who were more genuine and honest with him than adults. Jackson's personality also made it extremely unlikely for him to be a sexual abuser. Jackson was extremely bashful and kind-hearted. He was also somewhat prudish and easily embarrassed by any lascivious connotations. According to the word of professionals and friends, it was extremely unlikely for Jackson to ever be guilty of luring children into harmful or sexual situations. Jackson just didn't have the personality or aggression for it. It was not who he was.